Hi, my name's Valerie Parente. I'm an author, a poet, and I've been reading my poetry on these videos, but I thought I would read an excerpt from my fiction novel, In Touch. The reason why I want to do that is because today, on August 8th, is the 2-year anniversary of when I published In Touch. So it's really important to me, and I don't know, I haven't read an excerpt from my story to you guys, so I thought why not? And I'm gonna read chapter 10. I didn't preview this before. I'm recording this now. It's a little, let's see, is it too long? It's quite some pages, but I'm not gonna have a lot to analyze about it because this is a whole story that you'll need to read if you really want to analyze it. I don't want to give things away. So it'll just be me reading to you, and I'm just gonna briefly tell you guys the plot if you don't already know of In Touch. So, In Touch is about a girl who has obsessive compulsive disorder. The main character who has the OCD is Lacey Parker, and the narrator of the book is actually someone else. It's Jef Sterling, who meets Lacey, and he makes it his mission to try to understand her disorder because OCD is very complex and it's not as simple as it sounds or as the mainstream media makes it sound. And that was my whole mission in writing this book, to show you the misconceptions, to show you the weird ways it affects your personal life, your professional life, your academic life, really weird things that are affected by having this OCD ritualistic mindset. So that's what In Touch is all about, and I am going to read to you. Let me read the back cover first, just so that we can actually understand chapter 10. It's not too confusing. So this is the plot of the book. This is the summary of In Touch. Undergraduate physics student Jef Sterling has done enough textbook reading to know that the universe is home to countless mind-blowing discoveries, but Jef never expected one of those discoveries to be the mind of an obsessive-compulsive writer sharing the same campus as him. After reading a poem by Lacey Parker about her personal struggle with OCD, Jef's highly rational brain fixates on uncovering the mysteries held captive in Lacey's highly irrational brain. Throughout the course of a school year, these two students exchange ideas that merge science with art, reality with fantasy, and physical phenomena with mental phenomena. While learning from one another, Jef makes it his mission to make sense of Lacey's nonsensical disorder and all of its incredible ironies. How she lives by the notion of feeling everything emotionally but dreads feeling anything physically. How her mind lives to protect as it gradually wreaks destruction. And most paradoxically, how both Lacey's most rewarding qualities and most detrimental flaws manifest from the same brain. In Touch by Valerie Parente is a realistic fiction novel alive with intellectual discussion, mental strife, heartache, and anecdotal insight into the cognitive confines of obsessive compulsive disorder. That's what this is. So that should help you understand chapter 10. So Jef and Lacey, they interact in different contexts. Lacey tutors Jef for English because she is a writer. She's an artist. She's an OCD sufferer who's also an artist. So she's based on me. So this is chapter 10 of In Touch. Though I was a textbook kind of guy, I found myself captivated by Lacey's unconventional tutoring. She was getting me to think in ways I never thought before. Nobody had ever had as powerful of a hold on my mind as Lacey Parker did. Staying in touch with Lacey outside of school was hard. She didn't keep her phone on her all the time, like most people, because she thought it was ridden with germs. I wasn't bothered by that, though, because I didn't want to have stupid text chit-chat anyways. I wanted in-depth conversations with her right in front of me so that I could see her reactions, mannerisms, and her in all of her subtleties. For that reason, I valued the limited times I had in Lacey's company. The closer I got to her, the more I really wanted to figure her out. I kept finding that after parting ways, I couldn't wait to see her again. Not just to quiz her or heckle her about her illness for the sake of knowledge, but to actually understand her for the sake of, getting to know her, to listen to her, to be with her. I could feel the shifting in my interest, and I didn't fight it. I didn't want to. I had already looked forward to school, being a knowledge junkie, but lately it wasn't the classrooms that were quenching my knowledge fix. It was Lacey. My friends had actually started to pick up on me hanging out with her in the library. Sooner or later, it was bound to happen, and I had initially been prepared to answer the "why are you hanging out with her" questions with an honest "I'm studying her." But the more I got to know Lacey as a human being and not just a study topic, the less I wanted to admit my initial intentions. Gabe punched me in the ribcage. Hey dude, you up for some frisbee this afternoon? I was quick to decline. Can't man, I've got English tutoring. Oh, the snob, Gabe referenced with a jaunty chuckle and a nod behind me. I turned to see he was signifying Lacey, who was sitting with her legs crossed in the grass underneath the shade of a mammoth tree in the process of loosing its gold and yellow leaves. She was writing diligently in her flimsy notebook. While soaking in the image of Lacey... Sorry, I looked up. While soaking in the image of Lacey, hard at work, I corrected Gabe. She's not a snob. But the frisbee. I was wrong. I shut him down, still unable to take my eyes off the beautiful girl with her nose in her notebook. Very wrong. The library was packed when afternoon rolled around. Lacey and I had to sit at the notoriously wobbly square tables in the dark corner of the library. I don't know if the change of scenery triggered Lacey to be more rigid, but she seemed extra quirky. I guess change was hard to cope with when you had a mental disorder that thrived off of rituals and repetition. Lacey strategically placed her pen down, readjusting it until it was perfectly parallel with her textbook and notepad. She had an unreachable glaze over her stare, lost in her own obsessive-compulsive world. When Lacey was finally satisfied, she put her hand in her lap. I could tell she had no idea I had been watching her. You good? I spoke up. Oh yeah, fine, I'm fine. Is this another law? Everything on the table has to be parallel? Huh, you wish it was that simple, she scoffed. I have 3 things on the table. With an odd bunch of items, they all have to be aligned. When there's an even bunch of items, there needs to be an outlier that breaks the pattern. I didn't know what to say. I leaned back and smoothed over the orange cap that fell behind my head. Wow. Lacey crinkled her nose in her usual cute way. I know. Nah, it's cool, I dismissed, while pulling my latest English assignment out of my folder and sliding it across the rickety table to her. I had to rewrite the ending to some short story that I quite frankly didn't understand. Lacey sat still, with hands clutching the loose-leaf sheet I half-assed my English homework on. I folded my arms and pushed back in my seat so that only the back legs of the chair were on the ground. As I fidgeted in the seat, I locked my stare onto Lacey's notebook, the key to her mental landscape. What kind of wonders existed in that world? Were a mystery to me. Damn, did I want to read what was in there. Or any of her writing, for that matter. Oh, that drives me crazy, Lacey commented halfway through reading my assignment. There was a high-pitched squeak as I landed back to the library rug and leaned over the table, trying to see what I did wrong. What? Oh, it's just you keep switching tenses. Pfft. I dropped back to my seat and waved her comment away. That's no big deal. She disagreed. It's a very big deal, actually. Having the correct tense is important. For example, I have friends is significantly different than I had friends. Totally different meaning. I mumbled unhappily towards the somber example. Lacey returned to reading. This time she paid me a compliment. You know what you do well, Jef? You're good at showing and not telling. You describe. I was half listening to her because I was mesmerized by the notebook on the table. I couldn't begin to imagine the marvels that lived in there. Jef, are you listening? I don't want to talk about my writing, I unapologetically admitted. Lacey loosened her grip on my homework and raised her eyebrows at me. Well then, what writing do you want to talk about? Yours. Her face heated up. You do? I want to read some of your stuff in your notebook. Oh, no, you don't, she laughed. That's all a bunch of rough draft material. Yeah, but I feel like I could learn a lot from it. She slouched with modest compliance. Possibly. So can I read it? I didn't hold back my persistence to get my hands on the notebook. Lacey thought hard while staring up at the ceiling lamp, puckering her lips so that they were compacted into a tight pout. After a solid moment of thinking, she compromised. I'll tell you what. I'll select some pieces to show you, and we'll make a day out of it. I was almost too excited to talk. I got to read her work and spend a day with this fascinating person. Deal, I managed to cough out. I guess my eager reaction was a little bit too loud, because all of a sudden the library fell quiet. I could feel other students staring at me. In my self-consciousness, I scanned the surroundings only to spot somebody I really didn't want to see. Carson. He was staring at Lacey. That bothered me more than it probably should have. It's just that Lacey seemed like this otherworldly figure. She was this ethereal mind that I, and only I, had stumbled upon. And to see anybody from my life prior to meeting Lacey doing so little as glancing at her felt like they were threatening my relevance in her life. From the corner of my eye, I could see Carson's expression was twisted with befuddlement. I knew why he was confused. He wanted to know why I was sitting with, just as Gabe referred to her, the snob. Before Carson could come over and make a detrimental comment, I hurried to get Lacey to scram this crowded joint with me. I quickly improvised some kind of excuse. Hey, I don't think I like this corner. It's kind of stuffy over here, don't you think? Lacey agreed. Yeah, it is. But there's no other free tables to... Let's just get out of here, I insisted. Okay, I guess we could sit in the courtyard. No, I didn't want to risk Carson following us. Again, I improvised with the first thing that hit my mind. Let's go to the park down the street. Surprisingly, she seemed down with it. Can I drive? Yeah, of course, I complied eagerly. Lacey unlocked her silver car, and I slid in the passenger seat. I imagine it was a pretty big deal for somebody as isolated as Lacey to let another person in her car. I wasn't about to blow it by whining about the heated seat. I tried to watch Lacey as discreetly as possible, facing forward but directing my eyes to the side. She awkwardly pinched the metal buckle of the seatbelt, crossed the strap over her upper body, and then quickly maneuvered her hand off the metal tip onto the cloth belt, successfully locking herself in. Even once she was buckled, she looked uncomfortable. Her posture was still very stiff, like it usually was in the library. I figured she'd loosen up in her own car, but I guess not. Warning, Lacey cautioned. When the car turns on, it'll blast some pretty loud metal music. I'm ready. Look, I'm strapping in, I announced while buckling the seatbelt. She laughed, and with the click of a button, the car awakened. A guttural voice belonging to what must have been a very vocally skilled female blared through the speakers. Lacey's hand shot out to the volume dial, and she turned the music lower. Do you hate it? She anticipated with a laugh. Not hate, I remarked while taking in the screaming vocals, crashing cymbals, and chaotic guitars. Just a little shaken by how loud that was. Yeah, I kind of go a little overboard when it comes to music. I like to get totally lost in the sounds, she commented while lifting herself up and peering in the rear window to back the car out of the parking lot. Especially with metal. I just love losing myself in the storm of growls and raging instruments. I never really understood the appeal of growling in a song, I admitted. Honestly, I didn't either at first, but the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. In fact, I love it now. Growling is so unhinged, so straight from the soul, and it so adequately expresses real, raw pain with the utmost passion. I swear, if the fusion of pain and passion had a sound, that's it. I scratched at my right sideburn and nodded. I don't know, I never really cared for screams. Lacey shook her head and blushed, and bit down her lower lip, which wanted desperately to form into a grin. It took me a good 5 seconds to locate the embarrassing territory where her mind had veered. In music, I clarified. Screaming in other contexts is fine. I mean, not in fear or anything, but before I could humiliate myself anymore, I clamped my stupid mouth shut. I would have been happy to crawl into a hole and die in that moment, but one glance at Lacey's blushing pink complexion, and I couldn't refrain from smirking. I actually made blood rush to her pale visage. I did that. I caused that. So, is this the only type of music you like? I tried to change the subject to calm myself down. By types, do you mean outside of the metal genre? With great ease, Lacey braked at a stop sign. I wasn't used to the lack of whiplash. Why are there subtypes in the metal genre? Oh yeah, there's many types of metal, Jeff. There's classic metal, black metal, hair metal, industrial, metalcore, progressive metal, doom metal, thrash, power metal, symphonic metal, alternative metal. My personal favorite is metalcore. I was impressed by Lacey's evident interest. I didn't realize it until now that this was the first interest Lacey showed towards something that wasn't a manifestation of her own mind. Like writing. I'm getting the impression you really like music, don't you? She turned her head away from the road to steal a quick glance at me. Of course, how could you not? Music is the greatest source of inspiration. Haven't you ever heard lyrics that tell a story, or lyrics that seem like the synopsis to a story? Like they're giving you the bare bones of a tale and you can just use your imagination to further sculpt the plot. And then there's the fact that you can accompany those lyrics with an orchestra or a guitar riff. Lyrics are an amazing art alone, but incorporate instruments and it's like a story but with sound. Lacey seemed invigorated just by talking about music. I swear there was more color in her skin tone and more energy in her voice. She raved onward. Lyrics and sounds have such a unique way of evoking so many emotions. That's probably why I find music so inspiring, because my writing is usually centered around an emotion, and music is a master at drawing forth emotions or elaborating on emotions. It's just so thrilling. When a song can give you a feeling, an emotion, an idea, damn, when a song touches you, it's euphoric. I wanted to sufficiently process everything Lacey had shared with me about her love for music, but I couldn't because the car suddenly came to a halt. I looked up to see we were already at the park. There was only a little boy and a little girl playing at the jungle gym. I must have been in such a trance while listening to Lacey and watching her rather than out the window that I had no idea we were so close. Lacey got out of the car before me. I think her lengthy explanation for loving music had stunned me somewhat immobile. Slowly feeling came back to my legs and I was able to scoop myself out of the car. Lacey paced ahead of me to the picnic table that was standing in wood chips. She lit up like a little kid. Ah, swings! Those are the best. Want to go on them? I called out while jogging to the table. She suddenly crossed her arms, making herself smaller, and stepped back timidly. Oh, no, I can't. It was kind of sad how Lacey worded her declination with the phrase can't rather than won't, as if there was a force completely out of her power prohibiting her from doing something so obviously she wanted to do. I watched carefully as Lacey went on to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear with a hand that she purposely covered by her long shirt sleeve. Who knows what kind of filthy children have been on those swings, and I highly doubt they've ever been sterilized. Seeing the deep stare of forbidden longing in her eyes, I tried reasoning with her unreasonable fear. What about the rain? The rain washes germs off. No, it doesn't, she shut down with the utmost confidence. You need soap. Water without soap is useless. I was taken aback. I don't think that's entirely true. To me it is. What if I told you? There's no changing my mind. It's a law, Jef. You must wash your hands with soap and water. I nodded, making a mental note. Little did she know I was going to go home that evening and make that law a physical note and stuff it in my OCD/Lacey research binder. The both of us sat down on opposite sides of the iron picnic table. We didn't really talk. Instead, we listened to the playful sounds of the little boy and the little girl laughing and running around the playset. Lacey watched the kids with nostalgia. I had the greatest childhood. Oh yeah? I was intrigued by the genuine twinkle in her eyes as she silently reminisced. When I'm at places like this, despite all the crap I have to go through with OCD and depression, I remember what it was like as a kid, and I can't complain. I lived a really fulfilling childhood. She flicked her head so that her hair fell on her back. I stared, admiring her profile as the wind gently blew her long dark hair behind her. Tilting her head up to gaze at the clouds, I couldn't help but revel at how attractive she was as she continued to speak. I'm so grateful this germ fear waited until puberty to kick in. I never would have been able to go rollerblading or play the fun games at arcades or go to the annual carnival in my town or play dolls with my sister in the middle of the floor or swing on the swings at recess. Thank God I got to do all of that. Seriously, thank God. She shook her head in wonderment. I couldn't believe how sincerely grateful she was for such simple childhood activities. I wonder if I'll be able to read the rest. The fact that these completely normal activities were so precious to her was extremely enlightening and eye-opening. She was right. All those types of things were precious. I didn't realize it until she said it, though. I took those things for granted. And if I'm being honest, I do have a tendency to think I'm better than most people. And you'd think I'd especially be that way around somebody as flawed as Lacey, but that wasn't the case at all. I felt a sense of humility when I was with her. All of a sudden, my heart felt whole. This was exactly why I liked spending time with Lacey. She made me feel like I was learning something, not just about a mental disease, but about life in general. Like being around her made me, I don't know, better. I just felt like I was a better version of myself when I was with her. Nobody had ever made me feel that way before. I was in the middle of mentally marveling at the impact this girl had on me when suddenly the sound of my name on her lips snapped me out of my daze. What about you, Jef? Did you have an amazing childhood? I quickly recovered from the internal mindset and felt Lacey's direct question catalyze a list of memories. Oh, heck yeah. I immediately started recalling all sorts of events. Sledding with my cousins down the huge hill in my backyard, sneaking my Pokemon cards into school to trade them with my friends, flashlight tag and capture the flag on the beach during vacation, playing video games with my brother. I had a blast. I bet you were the type of kid that seemed way older than you actually were, like an adult mind in a kid's body. Huh, I snorted at the overwhelming truth in that statement. I was also really shy. Oh yeah? Call me crazy, but I think Lacey wanted me to elaborate. And believe me, I wanted to. I wanted to share whatever I could with her. I couldn't hold back. I was so shy when I was little. So shy, people thought something was wrong with me. I soaked in the sight of Lacey before me, who was intently listening to every word that fell out of my mouth. She was so genuine, I couldn't stand it. I had never met anybody that made me feel that important, that got me excited, so excited I was motivated to share more pieces of my life with her. In fact, I remember my mom bringing me and Peter to her work on Bring Your Kids to Work Day, or whatever the hell that was called, and when her boss came up to say hi to me, I freaked out, got stupidly scared, and hid behind my mom's leg. Now, Peter, on the other hand, had no problem saying hello, so guess what happens? This lady kneels down to me and goes, "Oh, Lorraine, this must be your little special one." She said that to me, not Peter. No, she didn't. Truly amused, Lacey threw her hands up, covering her mouth and the brim of her nose. Yep, she did, swear to God, I laughed. Peter is, he has cerebral palsy and is mentally retarded, and that's Jeff's brother. Yep, she did. Swear to God, I laughed. Suddenly, a burst of laughter rumbled behind Lacey's palms. She wouldn't take her hands off her mouth as the unveiled section of her face turned pink. In no time, I was cracking up just from seeing her get such a kick out of the story. You think that's funny, do you? Lacey continued to laugh but shook her head. She was still blocking her mouth, trying to be discreet, which was cute because her hysterical laughing was so obvious. I'm sorry, she finally wiped away a tear. I wasn't the least bit offended. On the contrary, I was flattered that she didn't hold back her laughter just because I was telling a joke at the expense of my intellectually disabled brother. It's okay, you're allowed to laugh. I was smiling ear to ear as the autumn wind kicked in. Even Peter finds that story funny. Oh, that's awesome, she beamed. That is too great. He sounds like such a cool guy, Jef. It wasn't until Lacey's laughter subsided that a realization hit me. Lacey just touched her mouth, her nose, and her eye. What was that all about? She didn't mask her germy hands with her long sleeves? What had occurred differently? All that happened was I talked to her about when I was a child, and she was interested. Did her genuine interest outside towards my story have an effect on this mental disease that attacked her inside? Could it be that just like Lacey made me feel a little like a better version of myself, I made Lacey feel like a better version of herself? So much better that she didn't feel the urge to perform a compulsion? Was just the simple act of Lacey touching her mouth or nose or eye a glimpse of her if she didn't have the germ fear? That made me think about how Lacey had told me earlier at school how she didn't have her germ fear until puberty. If little actions like putting her hands over her mouth to disguise laughter were prohibited in the thick of her mysophobia, then what kind of major actions did she perform before 8th grade when she didn't have mysophobia? Hey, Lacey? It was almost weird hearing my voice, knowing I was about to wonder out loud versus in my head. Lacey, whose nose was pointed towards the young girl giggling on her way down the corkscrew slide, jolted to move her powerful eyes on me. Yeah, Jef? I didn't know how to put this. If you knew you were going to get OCD, you know, the part with the fear of germs, what would you have done differently? Her thin lips tightened. She thought hard. I would have hugged my family more. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Although I was prepared to be saddened by her answer, I was still shaken by the blow of sorrow her response brought me. Don't get me wrong, I hardly ever hugged my mom or brother, and I certainly didn't hug my dad. But my family was broken. Lacey's wasn't. Unless you could equate a mentally ill child to the dismantling of a mother and a father, then again, it was my brother's mental illness that broke my parents apart. Regardless of the parallels, or lack of, between my family and Lacey's, I still found it hard to accept that somebody as emotional and sensitive as Lacey could go without a hug from a parent every now and then, especially when your parents are your best friends. You don't hug your family? I questioned, out of disbelief. Lacey didn't hesitate to answer. No, I don't. I'm afraid of touching anybody. You know, germs. Oh. She caught on to my unusual silence. That's not the answer you were expecting, was it? I shook my head. Sorry, I thought it was about to end. I shook my head no, still taken aback. What can I say? I miss hugs, she admitted openly. That feeling you get when your chest meets with another is just pure comfort. And I didn't realize how powerful comfort was, physical comfort, until I got really ill. She shook her head as if trying to ward off the turmoil she had been through up until now. Now would have been a good time for her to have a hug. Lacey went on. Value your hugs, Jef. They're important. I should have valued mine while I was still sane enough to have them. All right, almost done. There's just one last paragraph. Everything and anything from the day's interactions with Lacey was on my mind when I got home. Thank God I didn't have to work the convenience store that night. I spent all of my free time up until 3 a.m. sifting through my memory and recording observations and quotes from Lacey. By the time I called it quits and scrambled into bed, the obsessive compulsive disorder and Lacey Parker study binder transformed into a Lacey proverb collection. She had a very philosophical, spiritual way about her. It was disarming. She wasn't like me. She didn't have statistical formulas like standard deviation or how to calculate z-scores memorized. She had a surplus of outlandish concepts memorized. Her deformed yet well-intended ideology was ingrained in her psyche, a place equally nonsensical as it was virtuous. Her mind was so tangled, but enchanting. Lacey was strangely enchanting. In my need to be as meticulous as possible, I retrieved the old silver permanent marker and added the word proverbs, however you say it, so that the metallic ink read obsessive compulsive disorder and Lacey Parker proverb on the binding and cover of the sacred binder. There was so much I wanted to know, to understand, that my heart started racing and I actually began to worry that I wouldn't fall asleep tonight. I needed knowledge. I just had to keep telling myself Copernicus's wise words. To know that we know what we know, and to know that we do not know what we do not know, that is true knowledge. All right, oh my God. That was a long chapter. That was chapter 10. This video is super long. I'm going to stop it before my phone accidentally deletes things, and I'm not going to analyze any of it. This is for you to analyze. And that is in the beginning of In Touch. So if you're interested, please buy it on Amazon in Kindle or paperback. Thank you, and happy 2-year anniversary.